Good morning, everyone. I am Marian Moskowitz, Chair of the Chester County Board of Commissioners, and with me are my fellow commissioners, Josh Maxwell and Michelle Kickline. Our ceremony this morning here under the great oak tree at Chester County's Springton Manor Farm is part of a weekend of countywide tributes to the people we have lost over this past year. With us this morning to also pay their respects are a number of our county elected officials. Our family, our friends, our neighbors, those who we worked with, and members of our community, we miss them. We thank you for joining us virtually for this ceremony because even more than a year after the first pandemic case began, we still can't get together in large groups. We hope that this ceremony and this weekend of memorial tributes will serve as part of the collective healing for our Chester County community. As of yesterday, we have recorded more than 543,000 deaths to COVID-19 across our nation. Close to 25,000 people have died in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and here in Chester County, we have lost 747 of our county residents. These losses are tragic, and the tragedy is made even worse, as many were not able to be with their loved ones in their final moments, to hold their hand and to say goodbye. They have not been able to grieve in the traditional ways because the usual practices of coping with loss, a funeral service, memorials, wakes, shivas, they've all been restricted or postponed. I would like to share with you some of the ways that I was able to get through the death of my sister 7 years ago. And I want to share this wish for you, for all that are suffering right now. My wish is that you remember their smiles, remember their stories, remember something funny they said or did, remember their history, remember their shared memories, remember they loved you, and even with tears in your eyes and pain in your heart, remember to smile when you think of them. The 18th century poet Thomas Campbell said, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." I know that through memories, through photos, through recordings, and through shared stories, every one of the men and women we have lost will be remembered and will live on. That is where I find strength in times of sorrow and where I hope you do too. And now, before Commissioner Maxwell comes to the podium, I will lay the first of 3 wreaths in honor of the 543,975 people who have succumbed to COVID-19 across our nation.
One year ago, on March 29th, this upcoming Monday, Chester County recorded its first death due to COVID-19. We had watched, heard, and read the stories of the lives lost in other countries, in other states, and even in other counties close to ours, before the inevitable happened here in Chester County. This loss was soon followed by another, and another, and another. By now, we all know someone who has passed by COVID-19 because of COVID-19. Someone whose precious life is now represented here at Springton Manor Farm and at Warwick Park and at Nottingham Park by a pinwheel that is spinning in the breeze. 744 pinwheels have been placed in the ground today, here and at the other 2 parks, to allow visitors to reflect and to remember their loved ones. We chose to locate these weekend memorials in 3 of our parks because this is where so many people have come since the pandemic began. We know that our parks and trails and the many other conservancies and preserves throughout Chester County have been a haven for fresh air, for exercise, and for switching off to the outside world for a time to enjoy nature. We also take a moment today to honor Chester County's healthcare personnel. By the very nature of their professions, our doctors, our nurses, hospital staff, our long-term care personnel, our EMTs, all understand and accept that sometimes their jobs go beyond diagnosis, treatment, and care. But even they could not have comprehended the level of energy, stamina, personal sacrifice that would be needed of them over the past year. Early in the pandemic, they worked in challenging conditions and sometimes without enough personal protective equipment. They did their very best to treat and save as many lives as possible, and they became surrogate family members for many of those who were losing their lives, while also worrying about the spread of the virus to their own families. There are many people who are not able to physically be with their loved ones, healthy or otherwise, over the last year. Grandparents not able to hug their grandchildren. People living in care facilities who became very familiar with FaceTime and Zoom. Drive-by celebrations that helped raise spirits even for just a little. And even the sadness of losing someone during this time to another illness, another cause, without being able to hold their hand and say goodbye. We do mourn all lives lost during this past year. Every one of them is important, and every one of them was impacted by the restrictions of COVID-19 too. Helen Keller said, "What we have once enjoyed deeply, we can never lose. All that we have deeply becomes a part of us." And now I will lay a second wreath in the memory of those we've lost in Pennsylvania and who died of COVID-19 over the past year.
A few years ago, the British author and illustrator Charlie Maxey wrote an inspirational book that offered hope in uncertain times. The book follows the tale of a curious boy, a greedy mole, a wary fox, and a wise horse who find themselves together in some difficult terrain, sharing their greatest fears and biggest discoveries about kindness, hope, friendship, and love. The adventures and conversations between the four friends are filled with life lessons. Simply titled The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, this book is loved by people of all ages. It was published not long before the world faced this pandemic, but almost every page of this book resonates even more today than ever. One conversation in the book goes like this: "What do we do when our hearts hurt?" asked the boy. And the answer? We wrap them with friendship, shared tears and time, till they wake hopeful and happy again. The last year has been filled with so much devastation and sadness, with challenges that we never could have imagined, and with unknowns. There have been many tears shed for interruptions in our daily lives, for the cancellations of birthdays, graduations, weddings, and many tears shed because 747 beloved people in Chester County died. Not one single corner of the county has gone untouched. And today, as I stand here, I remember my own father, who died shortly before this pandemic. He came to this country in 1956 with a dream and a hope for a better future. And every day, like so many of you who have lost a loved one, I hear his voice in the birds singing this morning. I hear his love when I say my prayers in the evening. And I remember, just like you will remember, his face and his thoughts. And I remember his last words to me, "Take care of your mother." And just like many of you did, I brought her into my home, into my pod this year to keep her safe. And that's what we all have to do. We have to continue to stay safe and care for each other, even as the world starts to see hope and spring and light and warmth. And now, I lay the third wreath in memory of every one of the 747 souls in Chester County from the age of 2 to the age of 103. And after I lay the third wreath, we will all pause for a moment of silence.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us in remembering our beloved family, friends, and neighbors today. In addition to the memorials that are placed here at Springton Manor Farm, at Warwick Park, and at Nottingham Park this weekend, we have created a Chester County COVID-19 memorial webpage where we invite anyone impacted by the loss of a loved one to COVID to share a memory, a story, or even just a name. That webpage can be found at www.chesco.org/memorial. And when we make our way more fully out of this pandemic, when we know that the loss and the devastation are further behind us, we will make plans to create a more permanent memorial to the beloved lost to COVID here in Chester County. And that will be able to be visited and reflected upon for many, many years to come. Thank you.